the movie Hellraiser. And when you watch this movie, there's a couple things Spirit really wants you to pay attention to. When we look at the Leviathan was a sea serpent, and you can find it in theology and in mythology. The Leviathan was referenced in the book of Psalms, in the book of Job, the book of Isaiah. It was referenced in the book of Amos. It was referenced in the book of Jonah, and it was also referenced in the book of Enoch. And when we look at the symbolism of the Leviathan, this was a sea serpent. It was a sea serpent. But more than that, the Leviathan was really coming to teach us about ourselves. And I want you all to watch the Hellraiser, because there's a point in the movie where the man conjures the spirit of the Leviathan. And I want to read something to y'all too, so I'm just pulling up my notes, y'all. So the Leviathan was never meant to be a literal creature, but the Leviathan was more so a mythical symbolism that stands for a powerful force within our astral natures. The Leviathan deals with our desires and with our emotions. This is why the Leviathan was a representation of a sea serpent. When we deal with water, we're dealing with the emotions, or we're dealing with the psyche. The sea in ancient literature was always symbolic of the nature and the passions of the astral body, which is responsible for our emotions. The astral body is the greatest primordial sea that the serpent, aka the lower desires, or the lower desire-minded ego, arises from. Thus, the purpose of God's discourse here is to speak to Job about his desires and passions as it relates to his lower nature. When we look at the lower nature, it carries the symbol of the Leviathan. And when we look at the spirit of the Leviathan really dealt with the changing of words, right? The spirit of the Leviathan dealt with turning people against people and nations against nations. The Leviathan spirit dealt with rebellion against God. The Leviathan spirit also dealt with insomnia, lack of spiritual growth, media deception, pride, and personal bickering. And so here we see the message of the Leviathan being given in two ways. One, the message of the Leviathan is symbolic for spirit really desiring for us to deal with the lower nature as it relates to the astral body, right? And this validates everything that we were talking about previously, about spirit preparing us to pass over from one aspect of our nature in order for us to transition to the highest aspect of our nature, right? And so the message of the Leviathan is really desiring for you to deal with your rebellion, to deal with your unrest, to deal with how you turn people's words against them, to deal with how people may be turning your own words against you. The Leviathan deals with your lack of spiritual growth, okay? It deals with your own personal bickering, it deals with your pride, and it deals with how you are allowing yourself to willfully be deceived by the media. So here we see the Leviathan coming up and spirit charging for you to deal with the Leviathan as it relates to your own nature. And in that same way that spirit is dealing with, or charging us to deal with the Leviathan as it relates to our own nature, spirit is also urging us and is calling out the spirit of the Leviathan as it relates to the collective. And the Divine Mother is speaking to the powers that be as it relates to the collective, and is telling you that we're calling it out by nature. We're calling it out by name. In the movie The Hellraiser, the remake of it, there's a point in the movie where you see this man conjuring the spirit of Leviathan. And that's why we have to really pay attention to the way in which media is being given back to you. And it's also a reason why we really need to understand that everything is ritual, whether you want to accept it or not. And the longer that you take to come into the understanding that everything is ritual, is the longer that you are unable to block the ritual as it's being given to you. Through your own receptors, through the eye receptor, through the ear receptor, through the heart receptor, right? Everything that we interact with is physically interacting with us. You're spending your currency on it. And so here we see the powers that be conjure the spirit of Leviathan. And so what we're going to begin to see is an even greater uptake of people in the media turning their words against each other, or turning the collective words against each other. We're going to begin to see an instigation of unrest. You first saw it happening with Kanye West and the declaring of White Lives Matter, wearing a t-shirt. And one of the messages of this full moon that spirit is really trying to give to melanated people is to get out of your feelings. You're too emotional. Get out of your own feelings and get to the point where you're able to identify when people are trying to conjure your energy for their own use. You're not getting anything out of it. So Passover stood for man taking on their own Christ consciousness. Taking on their own Christ consciousness and passing over from being a mortal man who can't function or think or operate on its own, needing something else or someone else to think and advocate and operate on behalf of it. That lower nature, that lower understanding, that lower perception evolving into its godhood of understanding that I am all things. That I stand in the middle of my own universe and I speak those things that be not as though they were. Because I understand that I am a physical manifestation of the pure intelligence that is the cosmic universe. I am a physical manifestation of that. And if I am a physical manifestation of that great big thing, then that means that I cannot incarnate into this vessel and play small. That means that I have to work my vessel. I have to work my being. I have to work my mind until my godhood comes online. Until my awareness shifts from I need, to I have all that I need. Right? That your language shifts from help me, give me, to I have all that I ask and need. Right? And anything that I don't need, if it's not on my path yet, then that means that you had no business having it. And 9 times out of 10, Spirit protected a lot of us from a lot of manifestations that we thought we wanted. Spirit protected a lot of you, just changing and going and operating in this year. Spirit protected us from a lot of manifestations that we were not ready for. Because it wasn't your spirit man requiring it. Right? Your spirit man had no use of it, but your pleasure and your senses did. And oftentimes, it's your pleasures and your senses that take you off course anyway. And so Spirit is now bringing us to a time of passing over from the mortal man and into our spiritual consciousness, into our awareness. Let's move on to Pentecost. Pentecost is considered the festival of reaping, right? Or also known as the harvest of grains. When we look metaphysically at Pentecost, it translates into the unfoldment of the spiritual mind. So we go from passing over the things that are no longer serving us. We go from passing over the race mind. We go from passing over the personality. We go from passing over the senses. We go from passing over the material. And then we transition into the unfoldment of the spiritual mind. Right? Because as long as you play in your senses, you'll never have access to the things of spirit. Because both minds can't function in the same vessel. That's why you have the devil and you have God. Both serve a purpose. Neither one can be eradicated without eradicating the whole. But at some point, the devil and God has to find their wisdom and understanding when is their time to play. Right? And we know that each being serves a purpose because the devil always had to go to God in order to get permission to make your life a living hell. So we know they both serve a purpose. If you believe in the devil and God in that way, if you were to ask me who those beings are, I'm going to point to the mortal man. You are the devil and the God that operates in your life. You are standing on both shoulders. So how can you balance the two? By bringing them both under your dominion. Not separating them and choosing one for the other, but by bringing both of them under your dominion. And how do you do that? By understanding the wholeness of them both separately and then understanding them both collectively. How does your devil serve you? How does your devil serve you in your wins? How does your devil serve you in your losses? How is God serving you? Is God enabling you? Is God enabling your behaviors? Because oftentimes, it's not God that's a problem. It's not the devil that's a problem for you. It's God. Because some of y'all guys don't hold you accountable. Some of y'all guys are not requiring you to come up higher. And I'm not talking about the God outside of you. I'm talking about the God that you wake up and look at every single day that you go and you pass a mirror. That God. Is God enabling you? Is God holding you accountable? Does God have a moral compass? Does God know when to not be God and to be the devil? Right?